They actually said, we're just patriots. We want things to go forward. And in fact, if anybody's keeping China backward, it's this personalistic rule is coming back in. Deng Xiaoping is setting himself up. Early in the 1989 protests, the government put out an official editorial saying what the students are doing is creating chaos. It's like the Red Guards. Nobody wanted to be like the Cultural Revolution. In an earlier point in 86, when that statement had been made, students wound down their protests. But in 1989, they said no. And they actually said, we're just patriots. You're more like the Cultural Revolution than we are. Protests kept growing. And actually, people beyond students began to turn out, workers turned out. And that really got the government nervous to some extent. If it was just a student movement, that would be one thing. But large number of workers forming an independent trade union. And then the government turned to a really hard line on the protests. Troops rolled in and tanks were used, and there was a massacre on the streets near Tiananmen Square. The killing fields were near the square, and it was very brutal. I'm convinced now that the reason why images like the Tank Man are so tightly policed and controlled is that the People's Liberation Army was always supposed to be something that helped the people against foreign invaders, and those images make them look like they're a foreign invading force. And so the government tried again to get ahead of the story and said, actually, this was chaos. We needed to reassert control. And there were some acts of violence by protesters after the crackdown began, but that story didn't stick. There were too many people who knew what had actually happened.